The experience of creating this channel has been nothing short of amazing. Nearly 100,000 subscribers. I thought I'd never get to this. Thing is, I'd like to break that 100k mark before the end of October. So all you need to do is subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe, and ding that bell. You're gonna really want to ding that bell. Trust me. Happy Composers Day. Lauren asked one of the most fiendish questions I've ever been asked, which is to describe what it means to be a composer. To be a composer, what actually is it? Every year I go to the Ivor Novellos, and the reason I love it there so much is because it's a bunch of people who just know what each other does. And what each other does is so difficult to describe, but so easy to share. For me, if I was going to describe the pure act of composition, it would be that of this. Just lighting a match, ignition. The rest really can be done by other people, but the very first act is that of ignition. And then we put it into some fuel and hope it takes. If I could pick a natural element to represent music, it would be fire, because it's kind of not made of anything, yet it warms us and it lights us in those dark shadows. That, a few months ago, was like the match head hitting the side of the matchbox and sparking. The sound of these three rubbing semitones. I mean, there's nothing to it, but there was something I just found beguiling about that, so I expanded on it. Would it take when put into the fire? Well, it did. The director liked how boldly simplistic, stupidly simple it was, and also enjoyed the prospect, which I kind of pitched to him, of what if we did a John Carpenter score but without synths, instead an orchestra, and he liked that idea too. And we threw mandolins, hurdy-gurdies and strings onto that fire, turned the top line into the bass line into the top line, part B, part C, angry versions, happy versions, but all from that single spark. Those three notes rubbing together uncomfortably. The legal definition of what is composition is if no one sang or wrote down the melody that you've just sung, or indeed on an instrument, no one has played that piece of music or written it down before you, then you have composed it. That's where composition starts and to a certain degree ends. Being a composer isn't just about composition. I think that whilst you could get someone to build your pyre for you, your orchestrators, your copyists, your musicians, it's your fire. You started it. It's your responsibility. So it's about you tending to it and making it grow to an appropriate size, whether that be a simple lantern or a candle, a small fire pit like this, or indeed a large bonfire. And sometimes fires do completely burn out of control. Those are the fires made by trailblazers. But it'll always be your fire. And what's extraordinary about it is even if you're really specific about the way in which you construct the fire, until you've recorded it, it'll always burn differently. But the fire is always you. And for me, composition, being a composer, is doing just this. This process with Spitfire Audio is getting to know you and just sharing that understanding without really stating it. It is a complicated thing to discuss. This spark, it's not like a miracle, it's just a match. It tends to often be the act of finding that spark tends to be fairly inconsequential, but immediate. We do toil over these things, we do worry about them, but they're not. When they happen, it is fairly inconsequential. It's not like some kind of shining beam of light as you're touched by some celestial power. It just happens like a match. But for me, the meaning of being a composer and the greatest joy is that it earns me the honour of working with live musicians, taking what I created as a spark, codifying on a piece of paper, and then becoming the furnace. And until we decide upon which take, which comp to use, every time it's performed, that furnace is ever so slightly different. It's a staggering honour to be someone who can work frequently with musicians. And that, for me, is when I understand the true meaning of being a composer. Is it the same for you? And how would you define being a composer? We've got a Twitter thread going on at the moment which is trending on composers, created by Composer Magazine, and we'd really like to hear your definition of what it is being a composer, what it is to you. Thanks for bearing with me for my first fireside chat. I don't know if I'll do another one, certainly not with the wind pointing in this direction. Subscribe, please, as I requested earlier, and ding that bell. It really will be worth your while. And one of those to everyone at Composer Magazine. See you again next time. I think that was okay. I think we'll cut together, get rid of some of the waffle. An okay fire? Just not impressed. Highland boy with his burning wicker man.